States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father God, I thank you for this day. I thank you that we can come into your this boardroom and just meet and just let us have good wisdom and judgment to help the kids in the district to do what's right. Please forgive us for our failure. Amen. Amen.
We'll call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. There is a quorum present with 5 board members attending, 2 absent. We did post the agenda at a timely fashion. We are having a legal meeting according to the Open Meeting Act. Next item, conduct public hearing regarding the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of service plan.
So we had this plan approved over the summer as part of our ESSER 3 grant. We have to review it every 6 months. And as part of that review process, we need to take in consideration any public comments and public input. We've had this at our Safety and Health Advisory Committee meeting and have gone through that plan. But basically, our return to in-person plan is the same as it was at the beginning of the year, which was our masks are optional. There are no vaccination requirements. We have increased cleaning protocols at the school. As COVID had been more prevalent, we kind of reduced in-person attendance. Now that it's been much more less prevalent in the community, we've allowed more visitors on our campuses. So we'll continue to monitor that. At this point, we have plan to continue the in-person and continuity service plan as we have. So are there any, we'll have another discussion about that here in open meetings and in our meeting, review that plan and ask that any discussion there. But basically, this is an opportunity for anyone to ask questions, both from the board or from the public. So,
By having
any questions? Any review?
Hearing none, all right,
Moving on.
We'll conduct a public hearing to discuss MODS ISD's rating on the state's financial accountability system.
We'll invite. So the same thing here is our public hearing on this, but this is our first report. And I'll let Mr. Van Dever present this, but we do this annually. We had some changes in the criteria for first report over this, but Mr. Van Dever, if you would.
Okay. There have been some changes in the criteria, and you can see all the criteria listed, I think 1 through 20 on the first 2 pages. But the most important thing you'll see at the top of page 1 is our score was 100 and our rating was A. Once we get there, the rest of it just kind of falls into place. But we achieved perfect scores for each criteria on page 2. The items that had 10 points, a couple that only have 5 points. Then there are about 5 items where they have ceiling passed. And if you look at page 3, you'll see if you fail those items, then it lowers the maximum score you can have, no matter how many points add up. But we passed all the ceilings on those indicators. Our score was a score of 100. The last couple of pages are some disclosures that we're required to make related to our financial records. The first page is reimbursements received during that fiscal year. The only reimbursement we have is for the superintendent, some travel. I think this probably really wasn't a reimbursement, it was an expense that we paid, but we have lodging and other, total of $2,400. The next page, the very last page we have, we're required to report business transactions between the school district and board members. You'll see we only had 1 board member, and we had total business transactions there of $14,690. And I guess at this time I'm supposed to entertain questions from the public, but I don't see public behind me. I'll entertain questions from any of you if there are any.
Anybody have any questions? Hearing none? Cool. All right. Next item on the agenda, public comments. Everyone signed up? Mhm. Next, communications.
I have none.
Next, consent agenda. We'll have items A and B, minutes of the November 18th regular meeting and the monthly financial report. We have a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept this agenda as presented.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous. Consider and take action to commit and designate the August 2021 fund balance.
So every year, we, as a board, will approve what we have is committed in fund balance. We have, I believe it's 1.1 million is what we're looking to commit to loans and notes payable. This would take board action to change. If that we needed that money, we certainly could use it, but it would take board action to allow us to use it in that fund balance. So our history and kind of precedence we've done is for any M&O notes or loans, we've done a close to a $1-to-1 amount, so that if we did need to, we could pay that debt off if that ever became an issue. So our auditors determined right now it'd be 1.1 million, so that's what we would recommend we commit. Mr. Van Deaver, anything?
That's the number.
And like you said, we could reallocate.
Absolutely. If we needed that, we certainly could. It would just take board action. Mr. Van Deaver and I couldn't do it without your vote.
Gotcha. Any other questions or discussion? We need to, do we have a motion to commit and designate the 2021 fund balance?
I'll make a motion.
Have a motion, have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Aaron, all in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. We're going to skip item 9 right now. Give her a little more time to arrive from another audit. 10, information items, principal report, athletic director report.
Ms. Fouch.
Happy holidays, gentlemen. We are at 4 students from November, so we're sitting at 227, 235, complete with all of the Maud ISD students. Our leadership council met with the high school student council, and they ended up coming together to raise, I guess, toys and cans for our area students and pantry. And they were 1,027 cans were brought in and 100 toys were collected. And then it shows you what classes won the pizza party and ice cream party. Those classes will win. Mrs. Bowitz took them all. So congratulations to those teachers. Carolyn at the elementary with Mr. Fannin, he is incredible. He worked with every age level from pre-K to 5th grade, and they caroled all through our district, even up here to the admin office. And so those are some pictures of some kids caroling, but he did all grade levels. And they sang with sign language. Some songs were in Spanish and some were in German. And they were our traditional Christmas songs. We celebrated the one and only Mrs. Versie on Monday. She has done 17 years of service and she is retiring the district. And then we had our ugly sweater contest today. And we had the Alvin and the Chipmunks. We had the best theme with Feliz Navidad. And then we had the Griswold Family Christmas. And they even had the moose cups to go with it. So it was super cute. And upcoming events, January is Board Appreciation Month. So get ready to be appreciated. We appreciate you every day, but especially that month to get to be celebrated.
Thank you, Ms. Fouch.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Wyndham. Not having a wrench on his chest.
Your sweater does not match up.
No, definitely did not do the ugly sweater deal. We have attendance rates that are pretty solid this month. Our senior class is a little bit low, but for the most part, the rest of them were up really high. We actually increased as a whole up a couple percentage points. We have a total of 137 counting VAP, LE, everybody else in the high school. Total middle school and high school right now, the first time we've had this, is 250 even. Kind of weird because because normally we were down about 247, 245. We've actually increased a little bit this year. The seniors completed their projects toward the no drug use program and then they were awarded a pizza party for it with Coach Fothergill. Ms. Harrell helped out with that. And then we had our 12 days of Christmas, and that I learned in the 12 days of Christmas, like Ms. Faust was doing. We decided to put a 10-minute massage in for the teachers, and apparently that is probably one of the best things I've ever given them. I didn't realize 10 minutes was such a highlight of the week, but evidently it was. It was Touch of Health that came in and did it, and they stayed and would have stayed longer if we'd have wanted them to, but our teachers loved that. We had a lot of fun with our dress-up days this week. We've had the Christmas drip on Wednesday, which I still am trying to figure out drip. I don't get that one too much, but
Dripping with accessories.
I'm dripping with accessories. That's right. So then we had that. Toys for Tots. We collected a lot of Toys for Tots for the families this holiday season by our Stuco. They donated the toys down to the Methodist Church. It was probably one of the most toys collection we've actually gotten in the past couple of years. So we were really fired up about that. Also, one of the things that came out, we started off a little slow and then we picked up at the end, was the canned foods. We picked up a lot of canned foods. Last year we had about 1,200. We haven't got the full final number yet on cans. We know we're over 1,000, but it was 5 full tables full of canned foods that we were able to donate. The band concert that we had this past week was a huge success. Mr. Fannin brought the elementary school kids also around to do the Christmas caroling. I figured Ms. Fouts probably had about 20 pictures of that because they were amazing. They were really cute. They had their bells. I mean, it was, jingle bells and singing in German and all kinds of different stuff. It was really cool. The kids did a great job of that. Our middle school kids even like watching them. Our high school kids even like watching them. It was really good. And then, of course, the band concert itself was a really good job, Mr. Fannin. And Mr. Bradshaw even got to see a piece of that, so it looked like it was a good deal. Students of the month, this month for us, 6th grade is going to be Brooke Allison, 7th grade Emily Pemberton, 8th grade Carson Wilson, 9th grade Brock Wyndham, 10th grade Graham Hawkins, 11th grade Landon Cottle, and 12th grade Nate Brower. Our faculty member of the month was Mr. Jordan Higgs, or Coach Higgs. And that's it for high school. Any questions? Anybody? Anything? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, athletic director report. Boys basketball is 4-9. Played pretty competitive so far. Played 4A teams, some ranked teams. So got third place in the PTAA tournament in Greenville. Got upcoming games listed there: Pittsburgh, Miller Grove, and Wascom, and got the big Paris basketball tournament. Coach Hudson feels really good about where we're at right now. Likes what he's seen from playing the girls basketball is 5 and 6. They start district play tomorrow against Linden Kildare, and then they play Detroit next Tuesday, starting at noon start time since it's on the break. And Coach Henderson feels like we're a little bit further along than where we've been in the past couple of years, and really likes our chances in the district this year. Football-wise, Casey Lamb was second team academic All-State. And then powerlifting, we're hosting 2 meets, February the 3rd and February the 24th, which we all know those are a big community event for Maud ISD and for the whole community. Facilities-wise, new batting cages are in, so we should be getting those up pretty soon. So that product should be where you can see the finished product pretty soon on that. And then the gym floor, we've had some complications with it throughout the whole year. December the 27th, we've got a crew coming in. It should be completed by the 31st, and we should be good to go on that.
The right volleyball standards.
The right volleyball standards that are not leaning.
The right standards you're in, they're just at a bad angle.
They're just kind of
Gotta
like
be fixed.
this.
No, they're not at last.
Is they
Is that important?
I think that could be possibly.
The bubble's not the right spot.
They should angle out away from each other, so when you pull them tight, they hear, but they're kind of, so they gotta chisel all of that back out of that floor and then reset it. And then with that, to try to make things right, they're gonna rescreen that floor. What we've asked them to do is, if y'all notice, a lot of those floors, it looks really nice right now, but over time with waxing, it gets darker and yellowed. And so what we're having them do is put a sealant over it, and we'll start using a clear coat, water base finish, but that way that floor won't continue to yellow, and in 5 years it looks old and dingy again like what it has. So they've agreed to do that at this point, free of charge, to try to make up for some of the things that they haven't done. So they're trying to take care of us. Hopefully we'll get all this right by the end of this year.
And other than that, just normal maintenance stuff out at the complex, and got a lot of basketball games going on, and spring will start as soon as we get back, and we'll be in a sport for now until school's out. So that's kind of what we got going on in athletics.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Update discussion of COVID-19 impact.
We have had recently, I guess, our first 2 COVID cases. They were in staff members, probably in the last 8 weeks of the 2 cases we've had. We've seen a little bit more in the community, but we haven't had any positive students that we're aware of in about 8 weeks. So we are starting to see a little bit of uptick here in Bowie County, both in town and around the community. So we'll continue to monitor that. We did have our booster shot clinic. We had a good number of staff members that did take advantage of that. We'll look at next semester as far as how things continue and continue to monitor those things. Thank you. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Next item is 6-month review, return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan. Kind of familiar.
As we talked about before, as part of our ESSER 3 grant, we approved this plan back in July, so we are to review that. At this point, our recommendation is to continue the plan as it was approved then. We'll continue to monitor if things change. We certainly can revisit that plan as necessary. This requirement will last the length of the grant, which will be through the 2024 school year. So every 6 months, we'll need to review that plan and see if we'd like to make any changes. But at this time, we have no recommendation for any additional changes. It is working.
All right. Discuss facility master plan.
We've talked about our kind of facility master plan. I want to give you kind of an update where we are. We had our first meeting, I'll pass these down if you would please, with WRA and the architects and our administrative team on November the 30th. This was kind of the overall agenda and kind of the next step in the process that we'll be looking at going through for this facility plan. So currently, the architectural firm has come out and done a drone footage of the district. They're analyzing what land we own, overall what our campus footprint is. So they're starting to look at those things. They will be here December 27th and 29th to do inside scans. So we'll come in and take 3D pictures throughout the building to start looking at classroom and size, what those classrooms would be. They also have all of our blueprints from previous construction that they are going to put in electronic form for us and starting to kind of analyze those buildings. So the next step for us, we kind of met and talked about the priority issues that we've talked to as a board. They met with our administrative team to kind of look at some of those things along with the TASB facility update. So our biggest concerns being our cafeteria issues, the traffic patterns, what solutions can we have given what we have. Parking, we saw that again as a major issue today during Christmas parties. That we, parking on our campus is certainly something that we would be concerned about. And we are looking at overall the high school concerns that we've discussed as far as that building in the 60s and some of the issues that we have. So they're starting to analyze those and kind of look at what we look at. So their next steps after that are going to be a staff survey given out during January and faculty just over any of their concerns that they may see as facilities overall. So that should go out in January, and we'll be looking at conducting our first community meeting what we're looking at be first part of February, mid-February, possibly first part of March as being the first one. You can see here, number one, this analysis, we've done most of these things. So now we are in that second bullet point where we're identifying what we need and what we're going to continue to look at. From there, we would have 36 meetings with stakeholders and that committee to start looking at overall priorities and visions of the district. From there, we would meet with cost estimators to start trying to see what those ideas would cost. So we'd have our wish list and then have an idea of what each one of those would cost, and then determine budgets or way that we could pay for those, and kind of a plan over the next several years. And then their last step that they have here would be continual communication with both the school board, community, and the faculty overall of what that plan may look like. So, you know, I know it's taken a little while to get everything put together and get in this, but these are going to be our next steps to really try to, you know, get input and start developing what are our highest priority needs, what would those needs cost, and then how can we fund those or pay for those as we move forward. What questions, do you guys, any questions that I can answer for you that you may have from this?
So where are we at on this list?
We've done, where it says number 1, A through E, we've really completed all of those. So we're looking at that number 2, where we're picking out areas of need based on these analysis and then trying to prioritize those areas. So moving into next semester, we'll be moving into that number 3, where we start determining what do we want, what do we need, you know, some of those visions for the future, and start having those actual committee meetings where we get more and more input on which directions to take.
That was my question. When will we start putting together committees?
So that committee will need to be put together between now and that end of January timeframe, and then schedule what days we can meet along with them. What we really recommended is not only for us, but also our committee, the architects, and then also, you know, our construction folks. So that would be reaching back out to somebody that, you know, we want to bring out back into, now that's Ideal rather than TMG, that kind of changed their name, but that's when you bring in a construction manager that can start pricing. So the architect can build everything and kind of say, here's what we're looking at. Then you have to have that construction person that'll actually be able to price out. And again, the first part is just a rough price. They're going to give you a range of what that would be. And at the end of this, what we should have is a list of what we, as a community, as a board, are considering, and then a rough estimate of what those would cost. And then we certainly then determine what we can afford to do, how we can afford to do those, and how we can stagger those, given our current debt loads, you know, and start making those decisions once we have that list put together.
How does communications from the committee flow to the board? How does that work?
So with this, we certainly would meet and have those, and then bring back those recommendations back to the school board and have regular discussions. As we've talked about before, you know, as a board, you know, we've had some discussions of things that were considered when we did our TASB facility update, areas of need, areas of concern. We certainly need to have those conversations if there are other things as we move in with that committee. But then that committee would come back and make those presentations to the board.
So the committee would have like a spokesperson come communicate?
Absolutely.
So you feel like that would move in a time enough manner from committee to board?
Yes. And really, this process is something that, you know, is going to be facilitated. They're going to help as well as us. Ultimately, it's us as a school district community board, but they're going to help walk us through this process. But absolutely, there's got to be good communication. But we certainly want to have that communication from our faculty in this committee on what our priorities, as well as what the boards are.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Next item is superintendent's report.
Overall, just updates. Roofing materials have been ordered. They're going to be here probably end of this month, first part of January, as far as the actual single membrane. We've got a little bit of time, but we know that we're going to have to wait on the decking board. So we're going to look at probably mid-February for the roofing replacements. Air Now has placed in orders for our air conditioner units, and what we're going to look at there, the ground units we can replace as soon as they get in. Those rooftop units, we're going to shoot for that winter break in February, when nobody will be in those buildings. They can get up there and replace those rooftops if we can get everything in. If not, then the next opportunity would be during that April. He thinks it's going to take him a good part of that week to be able to get up and remove those and put the new units on. So we can't do that while kids are in, so we're going to look at those too. Front walkway of the high school, they have completed all repair work. We have it primed and textured, and just the painting will be the last part of that, so it should be done before Christmas break, or before we come back from Christmas break. As Mr. Turner talked about down there at the baseball field, Our regular renovations are going on, ryegrass has been planted and overseeded. John's down there working on the infield, getting the grass out. We're in a much better shape this year than we were this time last year. So we feel good about where things are there. So that should be kind of where we are as far as updates. Energy efficiency, John is going to start next week doing a LED retrofit throughout the elementary campus, classrooms, hallways. We should get all of those put in at that point. We have and are continuing to work with Ideal Impact. The thermostats are in. They're in, of course, this building, the middle school, high school, and the tech building. We are kind of manipulating those temperatures depending on the building. What we found is our high school is typically staying colder. So we've adjusted that up so that they can have a little more heat in there, where our middle school tech building are tending to stay a little bit warmer. So we're certainly working through there. There's been some bumps in the road, and there will be as we kind of work through it. But the Campus Optimizer program is in, so it is uploading in weather patterns, and it should be adjusting those thermostats as we go through. So we are working on those things. We have seen a great reduction in our peak demand so far, which is, if you remember, 50% of our electric bill is at peak demand. That's one way that they save it. The other way, the only thing they're really messing with in these is a 2-degree separation between heat and cold. So we can move that anywhere that we want to. We just got to keep about that 2-degree separation, basically so that we're not either heating a space just to turn around and cool it off, or cooling one off just to turn around and heat it. So that's really the only thing that we've agreed to at this point. So we are continuing to play with that. Teachers, we've sent out emails for them to respond to us if they're having any issues, and then when they do, we've been able to kind of work through that. So we'll continue to work through that as we move forward, but it is a work in progress. All right, we had our safety security meeting held on December 3rd. Our topic, which we had predetermined earlier in the semester before recent events, but was on our active shooter plan. So we did have a committee of parents, teachers, and then also law enforcement and our board members, and we talked about our active shooter plan, and they made some recommendations for us, and we listened to those. We feel as good as we can about the plan we currently have in place. There are a few adjustments, like I said, we did get from that committee that we have gone back to our EOP and began to work on that. So our next meeting for that will be February the 25th. Will be our next safety and security meeting. We'll follow up with those recommendations in our emergency operations plan at that point. Election timeline, we've got school board elections that will be coming up. Our last day, let's see, last day we can order it be February the 18th. Last day to file would also be that day. Is that correct, Ms. Holly, the 18th?
That is the last day to file, and I apologize, I didn't glance back over on the date for the last day to call the meeting, but we'll need to, call the election, we'll need to call it in January.
We'll need to call that in January because the 18th will be past our board meeting, so we'll need to call that next month. We have 3 places that will be coming up this year, which would be Terry, Aaron, and Rusty. And our last item here we have is personnel and evaluations. So just for our spring semester, we do evaluations for superintendent in January. We do our principals there in February. We do directors in March, and then our teacher contracts would be done in April. So that's kind of what we look for going to the spring. Just a reminder of the way that's coming up. So, all right, that's all I've got. Go ahead.
You want to go into it?
We can. We can take care of that item, come back out, and hopefully Kelly will be here and be ready.
All right. Now we'll be going into executive session at 7 p.m. We're going to be discussing personnel according to Texas Government Code Section 551.074. Discuss and consider contract recommendations of the following personnel: secondary English teacher. We'll take a few-minute recess. Reconvene in executive session. First item, second open session is consider to take action on personnel contract recommendations. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I got to jump in myself.
We have secondary English teacher. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we hire Tina's son for the secondary English teacher position.
We have a motion, we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Please, unanimous. Next item, go back to item 9, hear and approve the 2021 audit report.
All right, we've got Ms. Kelly Birdwell with us today from Wilford Henderson, and she is going to give us our annual audit.
All right, thank y'all for working with my schedule. I was at Queen City earlier, so I was making the rounds.
We're just glad you could make it.
Yes, no doubt. All right, so I'm gonna just go over the audit like I normally do. Just hit some highlights. If you have questions, feel free to stop me during it or at the end of the presentation will be fine. Tony, have y'all done your first rating yet? Did y'all do it tonight or
Yes,
last?
we did tonight.
Did it tonight? Okay, so I'm gonna refer to some of those because that kind of shows you, this will be for your 21-22 first rating, but it'll be based on these numbers and this information. So on page 2, this is the independent auditor's report. You'll see it's an unmodified opinion. That's one of the indicators, so you'll get all your points on that. On page 3 is a paragraph titled Opinions. This states that the financial statements for Mott ISD are fairly stated for the year ended August 31st, 2021. If you'll turn to pages 14 and 15, this is a balance sheet for your governmental funds. The first column is your general fund, that's your main operating fund. You've got, the second column is your special ed, IDEA Part B formula, and then your third column is debt service fund, and we'll hit some numbers on those as well. Looking back at your general fund, you'll see down at the bottom, the section titled Fund Balance. Line 3000 shows that the district has $4.6 million in your fund balance at the year end. Now of that, you do have some designations. You've got a committed fund balance, and that's the retirement of your loan. You've got several loans, some debt instruments in your general fund, so this is the total balance that you kind of set it aside and say, okay, we know we've got to pay that before anything else going forward. You've got an assigned fund balance in construction of $1.5 million, other assigned of $375. Now, nothing's tied to saying you have to use that or have to spend it. It's just a designation for future planning and future purposes of your fund balance. It also is a good indication to TEA saying that we have, some needs, and that's why we have this fund balance of $4.6 million. We have some things that we need to do, whether it's construction or equipment or whatever it may be to serve your students best. That gives you an unassigned fund balance of $1.6 million. Again, in your first rating next year, you will have an indicator about having 75 days of cash on hand to get all the points there. And you will pass that because you have 75 days is 1.160 in your fund balance, in an unassigned fund balance, and you have 1.6. So you'll pass that indicator, get all 10 points for that. We used to kind of talk about it in months, and TEA wanted to have at least 3 months in that unassigned, and you do pass that as well on that calculation. So you do have an adequate, healthy fund balance for a district your size. If you will look at the debt service fund, you'll see that the fund balance there is $206,000. That's for the bonded debt that you have. And that is restricted only to pay for future bonded debt. So, this last year you did a refunding, and if you want to pay for some of the bond issuance costs and some of that kind of stuff, that's allowed to come out of this fund balance. All right, so let's turn over to pages 17 and 18. This is like an income statement for these funds. Again, your general fund is your first column. Total revenues is $6.3 million. Total expenditures is $5.6 million. If you look on down, you had a transfer out of $13,000. That was to subsidize your food service fund, which is normal. You usually have to do a little bit of that. So that has a net change in fund balance of an increase of $642,000. You started at 3.9, so that's where it gets you to that 4.6. This year is 1920 was really weird. 2021 was still kind of weird, with ADA and the funding, the ESSER grants, and that's, the subsidy for this COVID funding through the feds. And so, it's hard to be totally comparable from year to year, especially these last couple of years. But putting $642,000 to fund balance, there were some different effects. There's also the district did a very good job of being very conservative on your revenue side and also on your expenditure side. So, all of that plays into a part of increasing your fund balance. Let's look at the actual budget. That's on page 51 on the back. So we're required to present a budget to actual report, and I know that each month in your financial information, y'all can see that information as well, to kind of see where you're at. A budget is an estimate, and then your actual numbers kind of tell you where you're coming in based on that estimate. So on this schedule, this is again just for your general fund. The first column is your original budget. The second column is your final. That's after any budget amendments throughout the year. The third column is the actual numbers that we just went over, and then that last column is your variance. So if you look down at line 1200, you'll see that the district adopted an original budget to increase fund balance $74,000. That's basically a break-even fund balance. And then you did some amendments throughout the year in different categories and lowered it just a little bit to $67,000. And then you'll see you ended up at $642,000. So let's look up and kind of see where those variances were. If you look at revenues, you'll see that total revenues were $273,000 over the amended budget. Majority of that was they shifted some of our ADA state funding, or some of our state funding based on a hold harmless number, and shifted it over to the ESSER grant. So, you ended up having more there. Your expenditures were $255,000 under what you had budgeted. So again, doing a very good job of being conservative. And then you had also planned to transfer over $60,000 and only had to do 13, so came out to a positive there. So ended up $575,000 better than what your budget was. Any questions on that or the numbers? Okay, on the last section, page 68 and 69, this is another independent auditor's report. Again, it's a first rating indicator to where you did not have any deficiencies in internal controls over your financial reporting, over your financial statements. And then also we have to look at your compliance with laws and regulations in regards to state law. And we did not find any instances of non-compliance there as well. So you've got all three letters are clean opinions. You put $600,000 to fund balance for a general fund, and we're able to do some designations for your future planning. Mr. Bradshaw, Mr. Van Dieven, when they came over, we talked about future plans of some of the fund balances there, and all schools have needs, and it's just putting those in priority and seeing where to spend that money. It's the balancing act of making sure you have enough fund balance, but also taking care of your facilities and different things that you need to as you have planned. So the last part of this, there's a side letter, and this is where it discusses some of our audit matters and different things as far as performing the audit. At the back, we do have some comments and recommendations. It's on the back page. During the audit, we did have several audit adjustments that we were correcting some of the financial records, and we would just encourage Tommy to look at those and try to make those adjustments each year before we get the financial numbers to make sure that the reports you guys are getting are accurate, and nothing was material. We did not change the numbers materially, but it's just balancing, trying to get everything in the right spot. Again, on the special revenue funds, kind of the same thing. He had some issues with rolling those, and we've recommended that he look at those this year and make sure that they roll correctly. He's still learning. He has very good knowledge of accounting, but new software and school district is a challenge. And like I was saying, even with, it's not even a normal, you hadn't even been in a normal year, really. With COVID hitting and then all these changes, TEA were throwing things out right and left towards the end of the summer. And, Tommy and his staff do a good job of, staying on top of that and trying to make adjustments for what they did. So we appreciate their work for the audit and getting it prepared and helping us get through it as well. Are there any questions for me concerning the audit?
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming out.
Yes, no problem.
We have to approve it.
Yeah, we just accept that, approve that audit report.
So we have a motion. Any questions or discussion? We have a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second. Have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. It is unanimous. Next item,
Thank you all so much.
one thing left is the adjourned item. We have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Second that.
It is unanimous.